Greek vocabulary into the native Egyptian language, so much so that probably more than 25% of the New Testament, when translated into Coptic, is composed of Greek words. So there's Greek words throughout our liturgy. So in fact, in some of the vocabulary lists that you have in your hand now, there are Greek words like doron or doria, which means gift, or kyrie, which means Lord. Those are Greek words. That's all I want to do as far as this is concerned. Any questions before we move on to our work and our lessons for today? Questions? Everybody's asleep?
No.
That was not it. I thought that might be interesting, but apparently
Yeah, it is.
No,
it is.
it is.
Interesting.
No, it is
It's good to
interesting.
know
Yeah.
how we got here. Where we're going. Just give it to me on the back.
No,
That's
the
fine.
TV is not working.
Valentin, we're good? Okay.
We're good.
Where are my writings? Anna, did Mira go? I think I forgot my writing, my pencil. Do you have any with you?
Abuna took them out of the car.
Okay, forgive me, 2 minutes, I'll go to my car.
Should we stop the spinning?
No, it's okay.
It's fine.
Sorry guys.
Edit it. Oh, you know what? No, it's here.
Yes,
The box is here.
You hear that?
Yeah.
Mama.
I forgot.
Okay. So we're going to start today. What we've done so far is basically we're trying to recognize words, trying to recognize letters, trying to memorize a few words. So if I am to assume that we put in a little bit of work in terms of memorization and for the preparation for the supposed quiz that we were supposed to have this morning, that means you learn at least 10 words. And likely you actually know well more than 10 words. It's just that you don't know that you actually know them. It's just that from sheer repetition and hearing them over and over and over again, you know them. So for instance, surely all of us know this word. Shli. What does it mean?
Let's pray.
Pray.
Is
So-
it pray or let's pray?
Pray. It's a command. So every verb, we'll learn this in detail later. Every verb in Coptic starts with a base. Then we add things to it to tell you whether it's let us pray, we've prayed, we are praying, we shall pray, all of that. Okay, the tenses, it's something you apply to what's called the infinitive, the base form of the verb. Alright, so we learned a bunch of words, and I want to remind you something that I said in the first meeting, that every single word that we have in Coptic, every single noun, has a gender. It is either masculine or it's feminine. Some are obvious, some not so much. This means father. So what gender do you think it is? Okay. How about Fe? What does Fe mean? It's in the lesson. Heaven. You think heaven is masculine or feminine?
Feminine.
It so happens in Coptic that it is feminine. You gonna ask a question? You gonna ask a
Yeah,
question?
I guess. Is there like multiple synonyms for heaven? Because like isn't always.
Yeah. There is.
Right?
So most words.
Faith.
Yeah. So most words in Coptic don't change their form from singular to plural. So for instance, in English, we have father. Then we just add an S for plural.
Right.
Most words in Coptic don't even add a letter. However, there are some words whose form changes entirely. So this is heaven or sky. Okay? Can mean either one.
Yeah, alright.
Heaven or sky. However, if you wanted to say skies or the heavens, it changes. Theoi.
Fail.
Yeah, so it's a peculiarity to the language that certain words change. I'll give you another example.
This is heavens? Heaven?
Heavens, plural. This is heaven or sky.
That one changed
Son.
completely, yeah.
So means brother. If you want to say brothers, snail.
Snail.
Snail. Oh, snail. Snail. Technically, it's supposed to be snail, but we say snail. Yes, Mary.
Is there like a certain rule to make things plural and you put an X or different?
No, not necessarily. There are certain forms you see, but there isn't a hard rule that if a word looks like this, then a plural is going to have to look like this. It sort of comes with the territory to memorize certain things, to recognize the word. All right. So we know that there is genders. So let's do one more. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Earth, in English, we refer to it as what? In the feminine, right? Mother Earth. In Coptic, it is actually masculine. Kahi. Alright, so, section 2.2. How do you say, the way we know something is masculine or feminine in Coptic is by how we say the in Coptic for any of these nouns. For masculine, anything that's masculine like Kahi. If you want to say the earth, one way to do it, peacock. Do you need a writing utensil?
Yeah.
What kind of spoons are you?
We forgot our percentage. Whoa.
Thank you.
You're welcome, my dear students. All right. I want you to be aware that in Coptic, there are several different ways to say the, at least in the dialect that we're learning, in Bohairic specifically. We can say Pikahi. Okay. We can also say, can somebody pronounce this for me? Epkahi, because of the jintham over here. Or, with certain words, we use a third, what's called a definite article. F. F. So for instance, if nahti. Anybody want to venture and guess what that means? Tinahti, tinahti, tinahti.
The faith.
The faith.
So, Mark,
Yes.
E is for masculine. Now, what's E?
All three are masculine.
Oh, and singular.
And singular. I'll get to plural, which is much simpler in a minute.
There's no rule when to use this or that, right?
Yes, there's some guidance, and I'll get into that now. If you were to read in the lesson, and I think it's to a reasonable extent it's quite accurate, that
Faith.
faith. In certain cases, the article that you use sticks to that noun for a particular understanding. I'll give you an example. This word, I don't know why, we haven't really covered this word a whole lot. Nuti. Anybody want to guess what nuti means? Yeah? What kind of faithful people are we? It's the equivalent of the Greek
Theos.
theos, means God. However, to specifically, this is in reference to any God, generally speaking. But if you want to refer specifically to God, the highest, God the Almighty, we use that third definite article, down from down here. If nuti. And it's the only one we ever use in reference to God the highest.
So what's the difference between this and choice?
Choice is Lord,
Lord.
Rabb, instead of God.
So, like, if you say etnoti, it means you're talking about any god.
More than likely. Yeah, in Boharic, yes. But you don't even see it usually. What you see oftentimes is pinuti, in reference to some pagan god or another. Or if you were to say that you're talking about some sinner and his god is the love of money or something. We see examples like this in literature. Okay? So in the case, even though typically this article is referred to as a weak article, meaning it's not referring to something specific, when it comes to God, this is the one that's usually used. Okay? Let's talk about feminine articles.
What is Jesus and God?
I didn't hear it. What's your question?
Jesus and God.
Again?
Jesus.
Okay, so for instance, somebody just mentioned Jesus Christ. Here's Jesus, Jesus. When you want to say Christos, by itself, this is not actually proper in Coptic. So in order to say Jesus Christ, they actually say Pi Christos. Literally, Jesus the Christ. Jesus the Anointed One. Okay? You don't see Ab Christos or anything like that. You don't see that. Okay? You say Pi Christos. Let's talk about feminine ones. Feminine articles. Also, there are three. The two most common, T. For instance, T Parthenos, the Virgin. Or Timab, the mother.
Or Ethmo.
Yeah, so that's what I get to.
So
Often,
this or this?
yeah. So oftentimes we're gonna, yes.
Both are mother?
No, this one is virgin.
Virgin, okay.
This one is mother. But what Manel, yes,
Sorry, can I add extra after V, like V?
yes, yeah, mom. Okay. Now, what Manel is getting at is oftentimes we actually don't see T-Mov, we see F-Mov. Why? Because this F is the other way, one other way in Coptic to say the for something feminine.
It's F, not F.
F, T-H,
TH.
theta, theta.
بس كان في حاجة مش شوية F.
الأس للفمن.
How we write it? Yeah. Okay. Like TH. That?
So for instance,
Yeah, okay.
can somebody pronounce this for me? Sure. Eshimi. Eshimi means woman.
Is he me?
Eshimi. This is an S. H. This is a double E. This is a double E. This is an M. Eshimi. If you want to say the woman, T. Eshimi. Are we following? Or having trouble?
No,
Yes.
it's fine.
Oh, the singular, the one. Oh, okay.
And to say in referring to something that's feminine, anything that's feminine, to say the, you have two choices. You have T or F. Either one.
Say it
You
again.
good?
So 2 feminine, 3 masculine.
Yes. And oftentimes, in fact, there is a third one in feminine as well that's not as used as often in this dialect, the one we use all the time now, and that is et, like this.
So it's like the masculine.
What?
P, F,
What,
F,
feminine?
or masculine,
It?
feminine.
It's
T, F, F,
This one, et.
F.
It's in the lesson, which I encourage you to read when we get home.
Okay.
So, for instance, we all live in one of these. A house.
It's more hay, A.
A. We in the church now we pronounce it as E, but it's really supposed to be A. Nonetheless, if you want to say the house, we see this actually during Matins. Hail to the church, the house of the angels. F-A. It can be. It's just oftentimes this is the one that's used because it's probably easier to say.
Right.
Instead of saying P-E, say F-A.
زي
It's more of an emphasis.
So H is H is A
Yeah.
all the time.
And this is a double E.
Is it because maybe it starts with a vowel? House starts with a vowel? That's why it's easier to
Yeah,
say F-A
yeah.
rather than
And we see that oftentimes in Coptic that a certain article will be used depending on the kind of on how the word is spelled. It's easier to pronounce. Just like in any language, things
Right.
roll off easier off the tongue when they're spelled in a certain way. Another word.
Romy.
Romi. There's a few of us in here. Man. Two of us actually.
F Romy. P Romy.
Which one do you think it is?
P Romy.
This is that or masculine.
In reference to, for instance, Saint Pishoy, Piromi, the man, and Teleos, perfect. The perfect man.
F Romy.
Yes, we see that often as well. Ephromi. Yeah, we see that.
It's the same meaning?
Yes, same meaning. P. So let's summarize this. Let's summarize this. For the feminine, we got T, we got F, we got et. What do they all mean?
Singular.
The, singular, for feminine. For masculine, we got P, we got F, and we got F. Which is singular, masculine, to say the.
Slow down.
So, feminine, you got, the first one is feminine, singular. The second group, masculine, singular. Okay? What we don't have in Coptic, that for instance we have in Arabic, is dual.
Yeah.
In reference to two. There are forms for nouns in Arabic in reference specifically to the number two. For instance, ar-ragulani, and many other examples.
No, but L is the same.
Yeah, L is the same, but the form of the noun, or specifying that there's the number two, that does not exist in Coptic as a rule. You have singular, you have plural, and you have the genders.
Well, it's like the French. It's like the French.
It's like French, it's like German. Romance languages generally do not specify the number two. Okay?
So the first one, Y, then
P, F, F.
Okay.
P, F, F.
And what
T,
is
F, F.
ايه بقى اللوكيشنز اللي بنستخدم فيها each one depending on what?
It depends on a couple of things. So it depends. Sometimes you want to specify, you want to be very specific about something. So in the case of God the highest, we use F noti. You don't say P noti.
We don't say that?
We can, but in not reference to God.
I have a question.
Yes.
God is a spirit, so why you consider masculine?
Yeah.
We're talking about theology now. I want to stay out of that.
It gets my attention in the paper that you put him as a masculine. That's not the case.
Because of God the Father.
Why did it
ما
happen?
هي God the
God the
Father.
Father.
لكن هو spirit فالمفروض ان احنا مش عارف.
إذا لا
And Christian,
It's always masculine.
Iman is asking why
Or
in reference to God, he is in the masculine, not necessarily in the feminine.
Well, even in
That's
Arabic.
all language.
That's in every language.
It's in every language.
ممكن
Yes,
ناخد example
you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, we did.
Nowadays, you know, men dominated.
Smart.
No, it's true.
This is for the masculine and the.
For masculine and for feminine, for singular, not plural. Let me give you some other examples.
Wait, you didn't answer the question.
If you're asking, if you're answering from a theological point of view, okay, in Christian theology, God the Father is referred to in the masculine. So naturally, he'd be referred to in the masculine in terms of the language itself. However, in Greek, in Coptic, the Trinity is masculine or feminine? Feminine. Are you happy now?
The whole bundle is feminine, you know? All three of them together is
هي دي
feminine.
واقفة
That's important.
But the house was a
We're streaming, so I have to be very careful what I'm saying.
F-E, masculine.
This is a Greek word, etrias. How do you say the Trinity? T, because it's a very common word that we hear. Every single liturgy. T etrias, the Trinity, referred to in the feminine. It's not ni etrias, which I will get to now. How do you say the for anything that's okay? So in the plural, when you have more than one thing, you do not specify whether it's masculine or feminine. Even if it's women or men, something that's exclusively masculine or feminine, there's only one way to refer to stuff in the plural. In the plural. Ni. Okay? So
What's me?
the for the plural.
That can goes masculine or feminine.
And it goes masculine or feminine. So for instance, ni is himi.
Me is.
There's a whole lot of them in this room. Including ones that are heckling me from the back. The women.
It's N-I, right?
Yes.
And Yota.
Yeah. And then yota. Okay? I'll give you
So
an example.
masculine and feminine. Doesn't matter.
Masculine and it doesn't matter, yes. Either one. Masculine or feminine. Somebody pronounce this for me. To'u. To'u. This is an O. And remember this? Moose. To'u means mountain. Mountain in Coptic is masculine. Okay? So if you want to say the mountain, Beetle. Beetle, the mountain. What if I want to say the mountains? Nito. Okay?
بس دي سهلة أوي يعني نيل كل حاجة.
Yeah. Plural is easy.
Yota.
Plural is easy. And you'll get used to even the singular because there's only a couple of them, you'll recognize them right away.
يعني احنا في الانجلش بنزود اس في الاند في الكوبتك بنزود في البيجينينج
Yes.
letters.
In English, no matter whether it's singular or plural, masculine or feminine, give me a second, you always just say the. In English, think about it.
Yes.
Even in Arabic, al. Okay. In Coptic, you differentiate the gender, you differentiate the number, but most of the time, the word itself does not change form. So for instance,
Oni.
Oni, stones. If you want to say the stone, Pioni. What if I want to say the stones? Easy. Yes, Marie. Sorry? Yeah. So there is a few examples.
So far it's only one for plural, right? Which
Yeah.
is-
There's one other one that's rarely used.
So ni only stones or the stones? Ni only.
The stones. There's always a the in it. I'll show you in a minute how you can say when it's not.
I was gonna say, yeah, what if you don't wanna say the?
I'll get to that in a minute.
There's another
So
big one.
ni only is any.
Actually, I'm gonna get to that next week because I want to just focus on a few things. I'll get to that next week.
So ni only the stones?
The stones. If you see ni, that means you're always saying the. You're specifying.
Why it's not singular يعني؟ عشان فيها نون.
Yeah.
ممكن تقولي be only. The stone.
So then, if I wanted to say the sun, Pishiri. But if I wanted to say the sons, Nishiri. Okay? Yeah, so I want you to think of it this way. In Coptic, you're going to see this generally. You build on a word. You start with a word, and then you add components to it.
Yeah.
So here is the word shiri, sun.
Yeah.
If you wanted to specify something about it, oftentimes you can add something to the front. You're not going to add anything to the end, ever, when it comes to a noun. Verbs is another matter. We're going to get to that in a couple of weeks. We'll see changes. But for nouns, you always add it to the front. Nishi, the sons. Pishi, the sun. Maria brought something up. It's on the lesson, which I encourage you to read sometime this week. In fact, I would like you to because there's some exercises in the end that we're going to cover next week. But it's good to read in advance so you're prepared when you come. There's one other way to say the for plural. Okay? Nen.
What's that?
The for plural. So these two mean the same exact thing. Sometimes we use nen depending on the word that follows it, simply because of spelling, simply because it's, I think one of the primary reasons it's easier to say. So, for instance, nenshiri. Sometimes you'll say nishiri, but oftentimes you say nenshiri. It depends on the word. Sometimes the word is easier to say when you say nen instead of ni. Yes. حسب الكلمة حسب اللهجة ممكن. So for instance, oftentimes you see this. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to use it. Nenshiri and Yisrael, the sons of Israel or the children of Israel.
Now I'm confused. It's M or a nen?
And this construction, we'll get to it a little bit later on. Just worry about this part right here. Nen, shiri.
This one says M.
Shiri or shiri?
This is something else. I'm saying the sons of Israel. Okay? Don't worry about this part.
So you pronounce
Forget the Israel part. I'm just going to confuse or forget it.
Mark, you pronounce the H as a like hit or eat.
It's supposed to be eh, but oftentimes in church we pronounce it as an e. What I'm saying is, if we want to be faithful to the language, the eta has a distinct sound that's different than the iota, which is e. There's a reason why it's there. It's supposed to be nen shiri, not shiri. Okay? Even though in church I know we do what we do. Another word. You can read my handwriting. Who said Amani? I don't think I've ever had anybody ever tell me in a classroom, I'll give that
The first
That's no in Coptic.
Martha's in Coptic, yeah, she's saying it in Coptic.
You know what? I'm going to teach you yes and no in Coptic today. Snayu. This is the plural. So Maria brought up how some words change form from singular to plural. There's a few of them who are like that. This is one of them.
Then say you.
What's son again?
Brother.
Brother. Brothers. So
In the
the
one.
brothers. He, son, the brother. Nen esneyu, brothers.
اثنين المفروض يكون في جنكة مع C.
Yes.
Okay, Jenkin is optional. No, seriously. Sometimes it's there, sometimes
No,
it's not.
I'm guilty of neglecting it for a reason, because most of the work that I used to do in academia is all in Sahiric, where the jinkim does not exist.
That's my feeling, yeah.
Yeah.
Because some text it's there and some it's not.
And then, especially that we use primarily printed texts
Not in
by
Saharic.
people who do not understand the language, if I can be honest about it, we're going to be done here soon. There's oftentimes mistakes that people do in publishing Coptic texts where jinkims should not be there and they add them.
Yeah.
Or they're supposed to be there and they're missing. Even in
So
Coptic,
there are rules.
of course there are, and even in Coptic Reader where I'm incessantly emailing them saying, you did this mistake, you did that mistake, it's still missing there's still a lot of corrections to be done.
طيب بما اننا بنقول على جنكن is it Christos ولا Christos?
Christos is a Greek term. Any Greek word should never have a jinkim on it. Should never, ever, ever have jinkim on it. So for instance, I've seen this sometimes, oddly enough. We pronounce this word in church, Isheros, mighty. From Agios, Otheos, Agios, Isheros, right? This is a Greek word that means mighty. It's supposed to be pronounced Ischuros, first of all, which we're not going to do in church. But that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. The Greek word is supposed to be Ischuros. Oftentimes, or sometimes, you see a jinkim right here.
So we're pronouncing it wrong in Coptic?
Of course we are. Welcome to the class, Mir.
But we're gonna fix it, Mira.
Yeah.
No, I think
We're all
whatever is
gonna
common,
keep
leave
well.
it common. Whatever is common, leave it common.
Especially a word like this. Anyway.
I agree with you.
Alright, let's end with this. Maria, you're only going to be allowed, you're only going to be allowed to use one of the following two words when you're speaking to your friends. Deal?
Yes and no.
What does say mean?
Yes.
Usually se is the easier word in most languages to say, because it's so quick. Se. Write it down.
What's it?
It's yes.
Huh?
It's
Yes.
yes. So, I have no illusion that Coptic is going to be a spoken language. Don't get me wrong.
No, I want to. Don't tell me that.
Mark, let's be hopeful.
I want to speak it.
Let's be hopeful.
Then we can, and then apparently we're starting a revolution, I just don't know.
Yes.
Okay.
No?
And also se is yes. Emmon.
No?
No? No.
Emon. So all the parents should say.
What about
So this is a word that I don't want you to learn.
What it is.
Emmon means no. Okay?
Are we having a
Let me go over a couple more things because they're easy, and it'll end for today. 3 more minutes. There are parts of speech that are called prepositions. What are prepositions? To, from, above, below, etc., etc. All right. In Coptic, there are a multitude of them, and they are used. When they're used with a verb, they oftentimes mean the meaning of the verb changes completely. And I'll give you an example. Sotem. We usually pronounce it in church as sotem. Sotem means to hear or to listen.
To listen.
Yeah. Hear us, listen to us. It's a word that we see often in the Psalms that we chant during Pascha week. Sotem et esmi. Listen to my voice. So here's an example of a feminine noun with your gentleman. Sme, esme. Voice. Okay? When you're going to say the voice, oftentimes it is et esme. Remember how we said to say the for something feminine, it's et, t, or et. Esme oftentimes is et. Okay? Now, sotem, to listen or to hear. But if you add a particular preposition to it, literally means behind, to be behind something. It's not to listen or to hear, it's actually to obey.
Yeah, I think it's 11:01.
So, we're almost done?
No,
You know what?
we're talking about football.
And I think we should, okay, 2 more minutes will be done. So let's go over a few, prepositions. Yes,
Because the other congregation is coming up.
they are? Okay.
They're starting.
Alright, fine. We will, let's go,
What is it?
Yeah, it's fine, let's finish this part.
Just this one.
just a few examples of prepositions.
We're just talking that the kids can't play until 11:15, but I think we're fine, right?
Yeah, sotem and me.
Okay,
This
I
is
was trying to show you an example. Okay, listen up. I was going to give you an example of how prepositions, when they're combined with verbs, and we're going to learn a lot more about verbs eventually, change the meaning of the verb. Sotem by itself means to listen and to hear. When you say sotem ensa, okay, ensa by itself means behind something. Sotem ensa means to obey, not to listen. So it changes what the verb is. Because you're literally listening as you're behind somebody, oftentimes, and you're obeying them. Let's say you're a child. Okay?
So
Sotem ensa. Yeah, but sotem by itself means to listen or to hear. This is not in the lesson, this is just an example. Feel free to write it down, I'll bring this up again later.
So are they written as 2 words or
Yes,
one
yes, they're 2 words.
Sonesa to sene.
Sotem and some.
I didn't hear that.
No,
Okay, let's go over a couple of
our own language.
Let's go over a couple of prepositions, then we'll call it a day. En.
Yeah, sorry, and behind.
I can't hear. I can't hear.
Insa is behind.
Yeah,
Inside behind?
yeah.
Behind?
I can't hear you.
By itself is behind?
Yeah. But it's never used by itself, like it's used in combination with something, but it generally means something like behind. Yes.
You mean behind, like behind something, or is this the behind meaning? يعني بتخلي meaning بقى له معنى تاني، الword بقى ليه معنى
By itself, it'll mean something like behind, but when you combine it with that verb, it changes
meaning.
the whole thing. Together means to obey. Now, there's a few prepositions in here, that's why I want to go over a couple of them before we go. Khed is one of them, means in.
How do you write the first letter?
Anyone.
بالظبط يعني next time we can tell him so.
Manal writes it a lot better than me.
The
high?
Guy. Here's another easy one, this is the last one. Nem means and, can mean with. It's in the lesson. Can mean and, it can mean with. Nemefil. The Father and the Son.
How to say my son, not the son, mine.
We're going to learn that in a couple of weeks, but I'll show you now.
Pasu?
So nem yani.
So, Shiri is son.
Okay.
The son, we already said, is Et Shiri or P Shiri, right? in Coptic, if you want to say something is mine, so possessive pronouns, Pashiri.
Pashiri.
And we have masculine and feminine
It would
ones
be,
as well.
if it was daughter, it would be Tashiri.
Ah.
Because of the T up here.
Pashiri emun suti min sa.
Wait, shady means son or daughter?
And daughter is Shady.
صوتين إنسان.
إنسان انتباه حطيت
It's difference of one letter. This is an epsilon.
المون دي يعني نون.
Epsilon and the A
She said doesn't.
This is the only difference.
is one short and one long, or are they
Yeah,
same
and
sound?
see, I've always wondered how Copts, when they're listening to Coptic, how they can tell the difference
Yeah,
between
it's
shady and shady.
Pashiri.
Like one is son, one is daughter, but they're nearly exactly the same.
Yeah, is one shady and one shady?
Yeah, I think so. I think one is shady and one is shady.
Like A and A, or
Yeah.
in French, and
All right, we'll continue next week.
yeah.
I ask you to read lesson 2 in its entirety, please.
Pashiri.
Huh?
Fair quiz.
Suti.
There's a quiz next week. I promise you. It's gonna be, I'm gonna quiz you on the vocabulary lesson, vocabulary list for that you already have, those 10 words. And I don't want to say anything that we covered today because that's not fair. The definite articles, the masculine, feminine, plural. Okay?
Are there more prepositions that?
There are more prepositions in here, and there is dozens of prepositions in Coptic, generally.
دي موجودة هنا ولا؟
الايه؟ Lessons up? No, you have it with you.
Ah.
Not all prepositions are here. There's just a few that are covered here.
So how to start my
An.
daughter?
So an.
I can't. My daughter.
Suti min sa na.
So-
أو an يختصر. بعد كده suti min sa.
So,
and Ka.
yeah.
Pashiri suti min sa an. بس كده. اللي مش بيسمع كلام صح؟
What's on?
Pashiri
What's on?
suti min sa.
Inside. Inside.
Inside بتاعي.
Suti min sa an.
What's on? What's
Oh
on?
baby.
No.